Let's get started with the first pro here. This is a 2021 Ecoboost high performance Mustang. So let's talk about that drivetrain first, because I do think that this Focus RS performance motor made it to this 10-speed automatic is going to be a pro with this Mustang. It shifts really well when you're driving slowly around town, and when you're trying to drive this more aggressively, you put this in the sport mode and you put the transmission in its sport mode. It does such a fantastic job. The paddle shifters react really well. You can bounce off the rev limiter, and this Ecoboost engine is genuinely very quick. I would say it's nearly as quick in the real world as the GT Mustang. It's that good. Of course, out on the highway or something, when you're pulling on the top end, the GT is definitely going to pull away. That's obvious because it's naturally aspirated, has more horsepower, but you get the idea. This is a very quick car. That being said, in my opinion, I think the manual transmission is a con. I've tried the 2020 Ecoboost Mustang with the manual transmission along with the PP2 Mustang. I don't like their regular manuals, but I do like the 6-speed Tremec manuals found in the Camaro, the Challenger, and also the Mach 1 Mustang. I haven't driven the Mach 1 in particular, but I do know that that vehicle uses a Tremec 6-speed versus the regular manual transmission that they typically have. The ordinary manual transmission I tried in the other Mustangs, they just have an ambiguous clutch pedal. You just don't know really where it's biting at, so that's just one thing to note there. But overall, good drivetrain setup. Another pro is going to be just how much charisma the Mustang has. I think it's way more charismatic than the Camaro, and I mean that by the looks department and also in terms of its engines, especially with the 5-liter Coyote V8. That is probably the most luscious sounding engine you can get for under $50,000. It's way more charismatic than the Camaro 6.2 and the 6.4 found in the Challengers. I genuinely think this is one of the best motors that you can get. It's also been proven to be reliable, and also when it comes to this 4-cylinder, being that Focus RS motor, there just seems to be an edge to it, and you can tell it likes to be pushed. Also, another thing that adds to the character is actually going to be the interior, like with this steering wheel, all those things. It just has like this retro vibe to it. The Challenger has a retro vibe in terms of its exterior, but this has it in the interior where you actually spend time, and I think that's very cool. But more on the interior a little bit later. One of the cons, though, is going to be the overall kind of lack of communication found with the Mustangs. I've experienced this with the previous GTs, like the PP1s, the PP2s from 2019, and also the Ecoboost from 2020 that I tested, which was also a high performance with all the handling package and all these things, right? There's still this ambiguous nature to the front end, the rear end, and I feel like that's one of the reasons many people spin out in these cars and put them in a ditch, because you just don't really know what's going on with this car, and it can really bite you in the rain, actually. Sure, most rear-wheel drive cars can get a little skittish out of the rain, but this one is kind of unforgiving. That's the issue with the Mustangs. Not that the Mustang isn't capable or anything. It's every bit as capable as something like the Camaro, but the thing with the Camaro and the Challenger is you know exactly what's going on when you drive those cars. You can pull off big drifts. In fact, there's many successful hooning videos of Challengers and Chargers because it's such a long wheelbase car, and you just know what's going on with it. You have plenty of time to correct for the rear end, right? You can get right back in track. The Camaros just talk to you way more than the Mustangs do, so you know exactly what's going on with that vehicle as well. But I will say for 2021, Ford has improved the communication with these Mustang products. I will say that every year manufacturers will make small tweaks and changes to a car. Even if they don't completely disclose it to the public, they do continuously make changes, and I have noticed cars get better over the model years as they progress. So that's a good thing. They worked on this. But a pro is going to be Ford is not stupid. They do know how to make a proper vehicle that's full of communication and is great to drive. It's called the Shelby products. Okay, I've driven the Shelby GT500 out on the track, one of the easiest high horsepower vehicles that you can possibly drive. I had no complaints with it. Even your grandmother can drive that car without any issues. It puts its power down so well. That being said, the Mach 1 Mustang also exists for 2021 and up, which utilizes a lot of the Shelby components. Now, many people are sad to see the GT350 go away. However, the GT350, as great as it was, the Voodoo engine is unbelievable. It did have reliability issues, so that's a problem. And the Coyote is still an amazing engine. but now it's blended together with all these Shelby components. That could be the one Mustang that is perfect right out of the box, similar to the Camaro products where you don't have to do any modifications to make it drive properly. And that's the other thing, the Mustang has plenty of aftermarket support. Many people have upgraded the suspension, the bushings, wheel and tire packages, sway bars. They did all these things and they have been able to get this car to handle properly, communicate properly. So if you're willing to dump some money into this, you can fix a lot of those at the limit driving issues that I mentioned there, if you so choose. But as a daily driver, none of that really matters, because this is great to drive around, just tooling around at the speed limit. This is very satisfactory to the Mustangs. It also gets pretty good fuel economy. That's another big pro to this. I've seen well over 20 mpg in the city, but out on the highway it's kind of average. I've been getting like 25, 26 on the highway, and I've seen almost that high of a figure out in the city as well. So the city and the highway mpg is almost matched in this vehicle. Even though it's quoted to do almost 30 mpg out on the highway. But for the most part, this is still going to be far more efficient and economical than the V8 Mustangs. I think I averaged 16 in the city with the Mustang GT and 22 or 23 or something like that on the highway. So this is definitely better than the GT Mustang in terms of fuel economy, as you would expect. Now, the interior is kind of a pro and a con. The con of this interior is, obviously, this is an affordable kind of blue-collared sports car. All these Camaros and Challengers and Mustangs are. This is going to be a more plastic interior space. Of course, I don't really care because the price is affordable on these things. I've been able to option out EcoBoost Mustangs for around $38,000 and the V8 Mustangs for around $45,000, $47,000. Not bad for the level of performance that you are getting here. But as I mentioned before, things like the steering wheel, these metal toggle switches, this engine stop start button, they all have this cool retro feel to it that makes it fun to interact with on an everyday basis. You have these oil pressure gauges on the front here. The digital gauge cluster is something that many people love. The infotainment system in the center here is easy to use, ergonomic, you know where everything is. There's a bit of lag associated with it, but for the most part, it's a great infotainment. I've always liked this, whatever they call MySync, Ford Sync, whatever it is. I do like that infotainment system. Plus you have physical buttons for your HVAC controls, volume knobs, tuning knobs, all these things. Getting the B&O sound system is certainly an improvement over the regular crappy sounding sound system that Fords typically come with. However, I will say I don't really listen to music much. I'm more focused on the drive when it comes to the Mustang. It's definitely a car you have to pay attention in, so especially when you're driving hard. But if this is more of a daily for you, sure, get the 4-cylinder and option it up with the Bang & Olufsen. It is nice to have. It's not the best sound system in the world, but it's definitely an improvement over the regular sound system that the Mustangs typically come with. The Recaro seats are also going to be a pro and a con with this car because I'm 5'11", about 190 pounds. This fits me like a glove. It's been super comfortable for me. It holds me in during harder cornering. It just looks fantastic as well. I like the blue stitching that goes all throughout this cabin space, but it's $1,500, and also if you're a wider person, it's not going to be as great for you. I'm not gonna lie, but if you're kind of like an average sized person like me, this is gonna be a great seat for you. It's been very comfortable during an hour plus driving session. I haven't had any issues, not even with the lumbar. But these are manual seats, something to keep in mind. It's just an extra thing that they did to keep the weight down, just so you know. A huge con with this interior space is going to be with the seat belt. It's so obnoxious. It won't properly latch onto that plastic bit that they put on the side of this seat here. They didn't enclose the seatbelt hoop, so it keeps sliding off that plastic bit, and I always have to reach back, and it's such an obnoxious thing. You would think it's such a small complaint, but when you live with the car on an everyday basis, that's so annoying. So if you can get a mod to close this out, this little plastic bit here, definitely do it. That way you can lock in that seatbelt there and it won't slide off, and it'll be much easier to grab onto it. Also, compared to a Camaro, you can actually fit larger people in here, like taller people can fit in here a little bit better, as you can see by the headroom. The Camaro, as great of a driving utensil as it is, it's more of a constricted cabin space. You know, getting in and out of it is a little bit more of a challenge. The Mustang is that middle ground between the Challenger and the Camaro. Obviously, the Challenger is the best daily driver because of how large it is. The trunk is much larger. But for those who want that edge when it comes to driving, the Mustang and the Camaro is a little bit better. And obviously, the Mustang sits between the two cars in terms of its size, driving feel, all these things. The trunk is decent. The rear seats are useless in the Mustang, but it can be used as extra storage shelves, and you could put down the rear seats and fit larger items back there, which is great. The Camaro's trunk size is okay, but the opening is useless. That's the biggest problem with the Camaro in terms of its trunk capacity. So for the most part, when you add up all the pros and cons, get this vehicle if you plan on modifying it and you plan on potentially doing some track day events, particularly autocross. This car would be great for that. And that's kind of what Ford intends you to do with this car anyway. So have fun with it. It's a great car, charismatic, it's an icon. I like it. There's not many relatively affordable performance cars like this being made, so take advantage of it while it's here. So thanks again for watching. Take care and goodbye.